The year was 1861, a time of grand dresses, flickering gas lamps, and paintings that held secrets. In a quiet artist's studio, far from the hustle and bustle, a special canvas came to life. It was called The Portrait of a Boy Who Never Lived. This wasn't just any painting. It was a window into a mystery, a whisper from the past that would one day capture the heart of a young girl. Imagine a picture frame, old and dark, holding a painting that seemed to glow with a soft, gentle light. In the center, a boy looked out, his eyes wide and thoughtful. He wore clothes from long ago, a simple jacket with shiny buttons and a crisp white collar. His hair was a rich brown, falling softly around his face, and a faint smile played on his lips, almost as if he knew a secret he couldn't quite tell. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. But the most curious thing about him was his story. He never lived. He was a dream, a wish, painted onto canvas with so much love that he felt real. The painting itself was not very big, perhaps the size of a window pane in an old house. The colors were soft and muted, like an autumn afternoon, with gentle greens and warm browns making up the background behind the boy. You could almost feel the quiet of the room where he sat, perhaps a sunny window or a cozy corner. Every brushstroke was careful and full of feeling, showing how much the artist cared for this boy, who existed only in her imagination. For many years, the portrait of a boy who never lived stayed hidden away. It was passed down through families, always kept in the shadows, almost as if its special story was too delicate for everyone to know. Some people who saw it felt a strange pull, a sense of wonder mixed with a little sadness. They would gaze at the boy's face and wonder who he was, why he looked so real, and why he had never taken a single breath in the real world. The painting gathered dust and secrets, waiting patiently for someone to uncover its truth. It waited for a time when its mysterious history would finally be brought into the light, not just as a painting, but as a story of love, loss, and the incredible power of imagination. Its journey was long, spanning decades and crossing many quiet rooms, until it found its way into an attic, tucked away, ready for its next chapter to begin. Decades passed, and the portrait, with its painted boy and untold story, finally settled in a quiet, dusty attic. It was an attic like many others, full of forgotten treasures and memories. One sunny afternoon, a young girl named Sarah found herself in this very attic. Sarah had bright, curious eyes and hair the color of sunshine. She loved exploring, and her grandmother's attic was her favorite place for adventures. It smelled of old wood, forgotten books, and a faint hint of lavender. Sarah was looking for something special, though she wasn't quite sure what. Maybe a lost toy, or a book with magical pictures. She rummaged through boxes filled with old clothes, tried on funny hats, and peeked under white sheets covering forgotten furniture. Dust motes danced in the sunlight that streamed through a small, grimy window, making the air sparkle. Then, tucked away behind a stack of faded photo albums and a wobbly old chest, Sarah saw it. A dark, wooden frame, peeking out from under a dusty cloth. Her heart gave a little thump-thump. It looked important, like something that had a story to tell. Carefully, she pulled the cloth away, sending a tiny cloud of dust into the air. And there he was. The boy. Sarah gasped, a soft sound in the quiet attic. The painting was even more beautiful than she could have imagined. The boy's eyes, wide and thoughtful, seemed to look right at her. His old-fashioned clothes, The simple jacket and crisp white collar made him seem like he'd stepped out of a storybook. There was a gentle sadness in his gaze, a quiet wonder that made Sarah feel a strange pull. She reached out a finger, not quite touching the canvas, but tracing the air around his painted face. "Who are you?" she whispered to the boy in the portrait. He didn't answer, of course, but his painted eyes held her gaze. Sarah felt a warmth spread through her, a feeling that this painting was meant for her to find. It wasn't just an old picture. It felt like a friend she hadn't known she was looking for. The dusty attic suddenly felt less lonely, filled with the quiet presence of the painted boy. Sarah sat down on the floor, cross-legged, and simply stared, lost in the mystery of his eyes and the silent story they seemed to tell. She knew, deep in her heart, that this was no ordinary discovery. This painting was special, and she couldn't wait to learn all about it. Sarah stayed in the attic for a long time, just sitting and looking at the painting. The sunlight shifted, making the dust motes dance even faster, but Sarah didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed on the boy. There was something about him that made her feel like he was waiting for her, even though he was just paint on a canvas. His eyes were the first thing that truly held her. They weren't bright or smiling, but a little bit sad, like he knew a secret that made his heart ache. They were dark, like deep pools of water, and they seemed to hold a faraway look, as if he was thinking of something just out of reach. Sarah felt a pang in her own heart, a quiet understanding, even though she didn't know why. She wondered what could make a painted boy look so sad. Then there were his clothes. They were so different from anything Sarah wore. The simple, dark jacket, with its row of polished buttons, and the stiff white collar that poked up around his neck, told a story of another time. A time before jeans and t-shirts, a time of horses and carriages instead of cars. It was like looking at a picture from a history book, but this boy felt so much more real. His clothes made him seem very proper, but also a little bit lonely, standing there all by himself in the painting. Sarah imagined him running through fields in those clothes, or sitting quietly in a grand house. She wondered if he had brothers or sisters, or if he played with toy soldiers. The more she looked, the more real he became in her mind. It wasn't just a picture anymore. It was a person, a silent friend from a long-ago world. She felt a strange, warm connection, a feeling that she was meant to find him. It was a secret feeling, just between her and the boy in the painting. She leaned a little closer, trying to see every detail, the way the light caught in his hair, the tiny wrinkle in his sleeve, the faint blush on his cheeks. Sarah realized she wanted to know everything about him. Not just about the painting, but about the boy himself. Who was he? Why was he painted this way? And why did her heart feel so fluttery and curious every time she looked at his sad, thoughtful eyes? She knew she couldn't keep this discovery to herself. She had to show her grandmother. Her grandmother knew everything about old things and old stories. Maybe, just maybe, her grandmother could help Sarah unlock the secret of the boy who never lived. Sarah carefully stood up, her eyes still on the portrait, feeling a new adventure bubbling up inside her. Sarah carefully carried the painting downstairs, holding it with both hands as if it were made of glass. Her grandmother, Nana Rose, was in the kitchen, humming a tune as she baked cookies. The sweet smell of chocolate chip filled the air. "Nana, look what I found," Sarah exclaimed, her voice buzzing with excitement. Nana Rose turned, her kind eyes widening as she saw the old portrait. A soft sigh escaped her lips, and a gentle smile touched her face, though it held a hint of sadness. She wiped her hands on her apron and took the painting from Sarah, cradling it gently. "Oh, my dear, you found him," Nana Rose said, her voice a little softer than usual. She led Sarah to the comfy armchair in the living room and sat down, placing the painting carefully on her lap. Sarah sat on the rug at her feet, looking up eagerly. "Who is he, Nana? He looks so real, but he also looks sad. And his clothes are so old," Sarah burst out, full of questions. Nana Rose stroked the dark frame of the painting. "He is a very special boy, Sarah. A very special painting. It's been in our family for a very, very long time. It's almost a secret, you see." Sarah's eyes grew wide. "A secret? Why?" "Well," Nana Rose began, her gaze fixed on the boy's painted face, "the most important thing to know is that this boy, he was never really alive. Not in the way you and I are alive. He was painted by an artist many years ago, and he was born from her heart, not from a mother's tummy." Sarah frowned, trying to understand. "He wasn't real, but he looks so real. How can a boy not be real?" "It's a bit like a very special story that someone imagined so clearly. They could paint it," Nana Rose explained gently. "The artist poured all her feelings into this painting. It was a way for her to show a love that didn't have a real person to go to." "So he's like a pretend boy?" Sarah asked, still a little confused but also more curious than ever. "Exactly," Nana Rose nodded. "A pretend boy, but one with a very real story behind him. A story of love, and maybe a little bit of heartbreak. That's why we've always kept it quiet, a family secret. It's a tender story, Sarah, and it means a lot to our family, even if we don't always talk about it." Sarah looked at the boy again, his sad eyes now making even more sense. A boy who was never alive, a family secret. The mystery was growing, and Sarah felt an even stronger pull to understand it all. She knew this was just the beginning. The idea of a boy who was never alive, a secret kept in paint and canvas, sparked a fire of curiosity in Sarah. She couldn't stop thinking about it. From that day on, her mission was clear. She needed to uncover the full story behind the portrait of a boy who never lived. Her first stop was her grandmother's vast collection of old books. Nana Rose had shelves and shelves of them, some with cracked leather covers, others filled with yellowed pages and faint, musty smells. Sarah knew these books held pieces of the past, and maybe, just maybe, a clue about the artist or the time the painting was made. She carefully pulled out thick history books, art books with pictures of old paintings, and even some dusty family photo albums that might have hidden notes inside. She spent hours poring over pages, her little finger tracing old-fashioned letters. She looked for anything about paintings from 1861 or artists who painted sad-eyed boys. It was slow work, like looking for a tiny needle in a giant haystack. Sometimes she found interesting facts about other things, like how people used to travel in carriages, or what toys children played with back then. But nothing about her boy. When the books didn't give her all the answers, Sarah turned back to her best source of information, Nana Rose. Every day, Sarah would have new questions ready. "Nana, did the artist have a name? Did she have other paintings? How did our family get it? Was it always a secret?" Nana Rose, with her gentle smile, would share little bits of information, like puzzle pieces. "The artist was a woman, Sarah, a very talented one, she might say. Or, it came to our family many generations ago, from a distant cousin who was also an artist." Nana Rose didn't know all the answers, but each small detail fueled Sarah's detective work. Sarah even drew pictures of the boy from memory, trying to capture his sad eyes and gentle expression. She thought about him while doing her homework, while eating breakfast, and just before she fell asleep. The more she learned, even tiny bits, the more she felt she was getting closer to understanding the boy and the artist who brought him to life with her brush. It was a wonderful chase, full of old books, whispered stories, and the quiet promise of a secret waiting to be fully revealed. Sarah's detective work finally started to pay off. One afternoon, while looking through an old, dusty book about local artists from the 1800s, she found a small mention that made her heart leap. There, in faded print, was a name: Eleanor Vance. The book said she was a talented painter, known for her portraits, and that she lived in the area around the time the painting was made. More importantly, it mentioned a great sadness in her life. Sarah excitedly brought the book to Nana Rose. "Nana, I found a name. Eleanor Vance. Do you know her?" Nana Rose looked at the name, her eyes growing soft. "Eleanor Vance," she repeated slowly. "Yes, Sarah, that's her. She was a distant relative, a very gifted woman, and yes, there was a great loss in her life. A very sad time indeed." Sarah's mind raced. A great loss. This was the first real clue about why the boy was never alive, and why his eyes looked so sad. She pressed for more details. "What happened, Nana? What kind of loss?" Nana Rose sighed, a quiet, gentle sound. She took Sarah's hand. "Eleanor Vance had a dream, Sarah. A dream of having her own little boy. But fate was not kind. She lost him before he even had a chance to truly live. It was a heartbreak that stayed with her always." Sarah's eyes welled up a little. She understood now. The boy in the painting wasn't just a pretend boy. He was a boy who could have been. He was the son Eleanor Vance had longed for, the one she had lost before he could ever take a breath. The sadness in his painted eyes wasn't just imagination. It was a reflection of his mother's own deep sorrow. "So, she painted him because she missed him?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, my dear," Nana Rose confirmed. "She painted him because she loved him so very much, even though she never got to hold him. She painted him to remember the dream, to give him a face, to give him a place in her heart that she could see every day. It was her way of keeping his memory alive, even if it was just a memory of what might have been." Suddenly, the painting felt even more precious. It wasn't just an old family secret anymore. It was a story of a mother's unending love and a quiet heartbreak. Sarah looked at the portrait with new eyes, seeing not just a boy, but a powerful symbol of hope and sorrow, all wrapped up in paint and a wooden frame. She felt closer to the artist, Eleanor Vance, understanding her a little better with each passing moment. The truth about Eleanor Vance and her lost son settled deeply in Sarah's heart. It wasn't just a fact from a book or a whispered family secret anymore. It was a feeling, a profound understanding that made the painted boy's eyes seem even more meaningful. Sarah now understood that Eleanor Vance hadn't just painted a boy, but her boy, the child she had dreamed of, the one she had loved even before he could be born. Nana Rose explained more, her voice soft and full of understanding. "Eleanor was an artist, Sarah. She saw beauty and feeling in everything. When she lost her baby, her heart was broken. But artists have a special way of dealing with sadness. They can make something beautiful out of it." "So she painted the boy just how she imagined he would look?" Sarah asked, her voice quiet. "Exactly," Nana Rose nodded. She imagined his kind eyes, his soft hair, the way he might look if he had grown a little older. She imagined his gentle spirit. The portrait was her way of bringing him into the world, even if it was only on canvas. It was her special way of being a mother to him, of giving him a life, a face, and a name in her heart. Sarah looked at the painting, which now sat on a small easel in the living room, no longer hidden in the attic. The boy's face, once just mysterious, now told a clear story of a mother's wish. He was the child of love and longing. Eleanor Vance had painted him with every detail she could dream up, the way his collar sat just so, the hint of a smile that showed his sweet nature, the thoughtful gaze that suggested a deep soul. It wasn't just a picture. It was a vision, a hope, a memory of a future that never was. Sarah felt a strong connection to Eleanor Vance, too. She imagined the artist sitting at her easel, brush in hand, painting with tears in her eyes, but also with immense love in her heart. She was creating a world for her son, a world where he could exist, even if only in paint. The painting wasn't just a piece of art. It was a mother's lullaby, a silent promise, a way to keep a dream alive. This discovery changed how Sarah saw the painting forever. It wasn't just old. It was powerful. It taught her that even when things are sad, people can make something beautiful and lasting out of their feelings. The boy in the portrait was a testament to a mother's enduring love, a love so strong it could bring a dream to life. Sarah knew she had to learn even more about this amazing artist and her very special son. Knowing the true story behind the portrait of a boy who never lived filled Sarah with a new kind of feeling, a deep sadness. It wasn't the kind of sadness that made her want to cry loudly, but a quiet, aching feeling in her chest. She looked at the boy's painted face and felt a great sorrow for Eleanor Vance, the mother who had lost her child before he could even open his eyes. She imagined Eleanor's heartbreak, the emptiness she must have felt. It was a sadness that lasted a lifetime, a quiet ache that only a mother could know. Sarah pictured Eleanor sitting at her easel, painting with such careful strokes, each one a tear, each one a hope. The artist poured all her love and sorrow into the canvas, creating the boy she longed to hold. Sarah understood that the painting was not just pretty, it was a way to mend a broken heart. And for the boy in the painting, Sarah felt a different kind of sadness. He was so real in her mind now, a gentle boy with thoughtful eyes. But he never got to feel the sun on his face, or hear a bird sing, or play with friends. He was only a dream, a beautiful wish that couldn't come true. Sarah wished she could reach into the painting and give him a hug, tell him he was loved, even if only in paint. The quiet sadness settled over Sarah like a soft blanket. It made her cherish the painting even more. It was no longer just a curious old object. It was a testament to love and loss, a piece of someone's deep feelings captured forever. Sarah spent many afternoons just sitting with the portrait, thinking about Eleanor Vance and her dream son. She would trace the boy's features with her finger, feeling the smooth, cool surface of the painting. She imagined the stories he might have lived, the laughter he might have shared, the adventures he might have had. This sadness wasn't heavy or dark. Instead, it made Sarah feel more connected to the world, more understanding of how people can love so much that they create beauty from pain. It made her appreciate the small joys in her own life, knowing that some dreams, like Eleanor's, could only live on canvas. Sarah realized that the painting was not just a picture of a boy. It was a picture of a mother's unending love, and that made it one of the most important things she had ever found. The quiet sadness Sarah felt for Eleanor Vance and her painted son didn't make her want to stop looking for answers. Instead, it made her even more determined. She realized that understanding the painting wasn't enough. She wanted to know more about the amazing woman who created it. Sarah decided she needed to learn everything she could about Eleanor Vance's life, and if she had painted any other pictures. "Nana," Sarah asked one evening, "did Eleanor Vance paint other things? Were there more paintings like this one?" Nana Rose thought for a moment. "Eleanor was known for her portraits, dear. She painted many people in her town. But this one, the portrait of a boy who never lived, was always the most special, the one kept close. I don't know if she painted other pictures with the same deep secret." This made Sarah even more curious. If Eleanor Vance was a real artist, there must be more traces of her work. Sarah went back to her research with new energy. She looked through her grandmother's old books again, but this time she focused on Eleanor Vance herself. She searched for mentions of her in old newspapers, local history books, and even old art magazines. It was like putting together a giant puzzle, piece by tiny piece. She learned that Eleanor Vance was a quiet woman, very kind, and always had a sketchbook close by. People in her town remembered her as someone who saw the beauty in everyday things. Sarah imagined Eleanor walking through flowery fields, or sitting by a window, drawing the world around her. She wondered if Eleanor painted happy pictures too, or if all her art held a little bit of the same quiet sadness as the boy's portrait. Sarah also looked online, with Nana Rose's help. They searched for Eleanor Vance artist 1800s and found a few small articles. Some mentioned her talent, while others spoke of her gentle nature. But no one seemed to know about the portrait of a boy who never lived. It truly was a family secret, carefully guarded. Each new piece of information about Eleanor Vance made her feel more real to Sarah. She wasn't just a name anymore. She was a person with feelings, dreams, and a talent that could bring imagination to life. Sarah felt like she was becoming friends with Eleanor, even across all those years. She wanted to know what inspired her, what made her happy, and how she found the strength to paint such a beautiful, sad picture. The more she learned about Eleanor, the more she understood the heart behind the boy's gentle eyes. Sarah had learned so much about Eleanor Vance, but still, a part of the story felt missing. She had read about the artist's life and her kind nature, but she longed for something more personal, something that would truly bring Eleanor's feelings to life. One afternoon, while carefully cleaning the back of the portrait, a task Nana Rose had given her, Sarah noticed something unusual. The painting was set in a heavy old wooden frame. As she gently wiped away dust from the back, her fingers brushed against a small, loose section of the wood. It wasn't quite a crack, but more like a tiny, secret door. Her heart began to beat a little faster. With a gentle push, a thin piece of wood gave way, revealing a hidden space inside the frame itself. Tucked snugly within this secret compartment was a small, leather-bound book. It was old, very old, with faded gold patterns on its cover. Sarah carefully pulled it out. It felt soft and warm in her hands. This wasn't just any old book. It was a diary. "Nana," Sarah called out, her voice filled with a mix of wonder and excitement. "Look what I found. It was hidden in the frame." Nana Rose came over, her eyes widening when she saw the diary. "Well, I never," she whispered, taking the book gently. "An old diary. I wonder whose it could be." Sarah pointed to the inside cover, where elegant looping handwriting spelled out a name. Eleanor Vance. Nana Rose gasped softly. Eleanor's own diary, hidden all these years, right there with her most special painting. This must be the heart of the secret, Sarah. Sarah could barely contain her excitement. A diary from Eleanor Vance herself. This was better than any history book. This was Eleanor's own words, her own thoughts, her own feelings, written down just for her. She imagined Eleanor, sitting quietly, writing in this very book, perhaps even while looking at the painted boy. The pages were thin and yellowed, filled with beautiful, flowing handwriting that was sometimes hard to read. But Sarah was determined. She felt like she had just found a direct message from the past, a personal letter from the artist herself. This diary promised to tell her everything about the boy, about Eleanor's love, and about the dream that became a painting. It was the missing piece, the key to unlocking the full, beautiful story of the portrait of a boy who never lived. Sarah carefully opened the first page, her heart full of anticipation. With the precious diary in her hands, Sarah began to read. The old pages, filled with Eleanor Vance's beautiful handwriting, were like stepping into a time machine. The diary wasn't just about Eleanor's daily life. It was mostly about her imagined son, the boy in the portrait. It was a secret world, created with words and love. Eleanor wrote about her hopes and dreams for him. She gave him a name, Thomas. In her diary, Thomas wasn't just a painted face. He was a living, breathing child in her mind. Eleanor imagined him growing up, learning new things, and exploring the world. She wrote about his imagined adventures. One entry told of Thomas bravely climbing the tallest oak tree in the meadow, his eyes sparkling with joy as he saw the whole town spread out below him. Another described him finding a lost baby bird and gently bringing it home to care for it until it could fly again. Sarah read how Eleanor imagined Thomas had a kind heart. He would always help others, whether it was sharing his last biscuit with a hungry dog or comforting a friend who was sad. Eleanor wrote about his laughter, which she imagined sounded like tiny bells ringing in the summer breeze. She described his gentle manners and how he would always say please and thank you. Sometimes, Eleanor wrote about teaching Thomas to paint, just like her. She imagined his small hands holding a brush, making colorful strokes on a canvas, his brow furrowed in concentration. She wrote about how proud she would be of him, no matter what he chose to do. The diary was full of these sweet, tender stories. It wasn't just a list of events. It was a mother's deepest wishes, a tapestry woven from love and longing. Sarah learned that Eleanor imagined Thomas loved reading books, especially tales of faraway lands and brave knights. He loved to collect smooth, colorful stones from the riverbank and bring them home to show his mother. Reading Eleanor's words, Sarah felt like she was meeting Thomas herself. He wasn't just the quiet, sad-eyed boy in the painting anymore. He was a boy full of life, adventure, and kindness, all thanks to his mother's powerful imagination. The diary made the painting even more magical, showing how much love could create a whole world, even if it was only in someone's heart and on paper. Sarah couldn't wait to read more, to discover every single imagined moment of Thomas's life. Sarah spent hours, sometimes entire afternoons, lost in the pages of Eleanor's diary. Each entry was a tiny window into the imagined world of Thomas. She read about his first imagined steps, his quiet joy at seeing a butterfly, and his thoughtful questions about the stars at night. Eleanor wrote with such detail and love that Sarah could almost hear Thomas's voice, feel his tiny hand in hers, and see the sparkle in his eyes. Through Eleanor's words, Sarah learned that Thomas loved to spend time in the garden, helping his mother plant seeds and watch them grow. He had a special spot under a big apple tree, where he would sit and read stories, or sometimes just dream. Eleanor described how Thomas loved animals, especially the plump, fuzzy bumblebees that buzzed around the flowers. He would watch them for a long time, never trying to catch them, just enjoying their busy dance. Sarah felt like she was reading about a real boy, a friend she was getting to know. She learned that Thomas had a favorite blue scarf that Eleanor had knitted for him, and he wore it even on days that weren't very cold because it made him feel safe. He loved warm milk with honey before bed and always asked for one more story. Eleanor even wrote about the small scrapes and bumps Thomas would get from playing outside, and how she would gently clean them and kiss them better. The diary was not just a book. It was a conversation between a mother and her cherished son, a conversation that spanned time and imagination. Sarah began to talk to the painted boy, quietly, when no one else was around. "Did you really love honey in your milk, Thomas?" she might whisper, or, "I bet that apple tree was your favorite place." The more she read, the more the boy in the portrait came alive for Sarah. His sad eyes no longer just showed a mother's loss, but also held the quiet wisdom of a boy who loved books and nature. His old-fashioned clothes became the uniform of a gentle adventurer. Sarah felt like she knew his secrets, his joys, and his quiet thoughts. She felt a deep bond with him, as if he were a friend she had always known, even though his life was entirely made of dreams and paint and words on paper. It was a beautiful, magical feeling, like being part of a very special secret that only she and Eleanor and Thomas shared. As Sarah continued to read Eleanor's diary, the imagined world of Thomas grew so real in her mind that she felt a new urge. She had to bring these stories to life, just as Eleanor had brought Thomas to life with paint. Sarah loved to draw, and now, with Eleanor's words as her guide, she started creating her own pictures inspired by the diary entries. She found her big sketch pad and a box of colorful pencils. First, she drew Thomas under the apple tree, just as Eleanor described him. She imagined his kind face, his brown hair falling over his forehead as he quietly read a book. She drew the sunlight dappling through the leaves and a little bird perched on a branch nearby, watching him. Next, she drew Thomas in the garden, his small hands carefully planting seeds. She colored the flowers bright red and yellow, just like Eleanor's descriptions. She even drew a bumblebee buzzing lazily around a big purple bloom. Sarah felt like she was stepping into Eleanor's imagination, seeing the world through her eyes and through Thomas's adventures. Each drawing was a little piece of Thomas's life made visible. She drew him climbing the tall oak tree, looking out over the town with a happy smile. She drew him with the lost baby bird, gently holding it in his cupped hands, his eyes full of care. Sarah even drew the blue scarf Eleanor had knitted, wrapped around Thomas's neck as he played in a make-believe snowfall. It was like a quiet conversation between three people across time: Eleanor, who wrote the stories, Thomas, who lived in the stories, and Sarah, who drew the stories. As she drew, Sarah felt even closer to Thomas. She imagined what he would wear, how he would stand, and what kind of expression he would have. She was adding her own touch to Eleanor's dream, making Thomas's world richer and more colorful. Her drawings weren't perfect, but they were full of feeling. They showed the gentle nature of Thomas, his kindness, and his quiet joy. Sarah felt a special happiness as she drew, knowing she was helping to keep Eleanor's beautiful dream alive. She was making Thomas real in a new way, not just in paint or words, but in her own artistic heart. It felt like the best kind of magic. Sarah couldn't keep her discoveries to herself any longer. She had spent so much time with Eleanor's diary and her own drawings, and now she felt a bubbling need to share this special world. One quiet afternoon, she sat down with Nana Rose, the diary open on her lap, and her sketchpad filled with Thomas's imagined adventures. "Nana," Sarah began, her voice soft but full of excitement, "I found so much more about Eleanor and Thomas in the diary, and I've been drawing pictures of his life, just like Eleanor wrote about." Nana Rose put down her knitting and looked at Sarah with a warm, encouraging smile. "Tell me everything, my dear," she said, her eyes twinkling. Sarah then poured out the stories from the diary. She read entries about Thomas climbing the oak tree, about his kind heart when he found the baby bird, and about his love for reading under the apple tree. As she read, she showed Nana Rose her drawings, each one a colorful window into Thomas's gentle world. Nana Rose listened with deep attention, her expression changing from curiosity to wonder, and then to a soft, emotional tenderness. When Sarah finished, Nana Rose gently took the diary and Sarah's sketchpad, her eyes misty. "Oh, Sarah," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is truly beautiful. Eleanor's words and your drawings. They bring Thomas to life in a way I never thought possible." She looked at the painting of the boy, then back at Sarah's drawings. "It's as if Eleanor knew, all those years ago, that someone like you would come along and understand her heart so completely." Nana Rose carefully turned the pages of the diary, then looked at Sarah's drawings of Thomas helping the baby bird. A tear rolled down her cheek. To imagine a child with such a kind heart, to keep his memory alive with so much love. "It shows the true power of art, doesn't it?" she said. "It's not just colors on a canvas or words in a book. It's feelings, dreams, and memories that can touch hearts across many, many years." Sarah felt a rush of warmth. Seeing Nana Rose so moved, understanding the depth of Eleanor's story, made Sarah feel proud and happy. It proved that the boy who never lived was still very much alive in their hearts, all thanks to Eleanor's art and Sarah's own efforts. The shared moment felt like a bridge between the past and the present, connecting them all through a beautiful, timeless story. After sharing the diary and Sarah's drawings, a new warmth filled the room. Nana Rose looked from the portrait to Sarah, a gentle smile on her face. "This painting," she said, her voice soft, "it has held so much quiet love and sadness for so long. It deserves to be seen, to have its story told." Sarah nodded eagerly. "It shouldn't be a secret anymore, Nana. Everyone should know about Eleanor and Thomas." "You're right, my dear," Nana Rose agreed. "This isn't a secret to be hidden. It's a treasure to be cherished and shared." Together, they decided to find a very special place for the portrait of a boy who never lived in their home. They wanted it to be somewhere everyone could see it, somewhere the light would fall just right on the boy's thoughtful face. After much thought, they chose the living room, above the old fireplace. It was a place where family gathered, where stories were told, and where love always felt present. Nana Rose and Sarah carefully carried the painting to its new spot. They hung it with care, making sure it was straight and secure. As it settled into its new home, the boy in the portrait seemed to look out with a new sense of peace. His eyes, still a little sad, also held a quiet dignity, as if proud to finally be seen. The painting was no longer tucked away in a dusty attic, a forgotten family secret. It was now a centerpiece, a beautiful reminder of Eleanor Vance's enduring love and the power of imagination. When friends and family visited, they would ask about the boy. And Sarah, with Nana Rose by her side, would eagerly share his story. She would tell them about Eleanor, her great loss, and how she painted Thomas as the child she wished she could have had. She would talk about his kind heart, his adventures under the apple tree, and all the things Eleanor had imagined for him in her diary. The portrait became a conversation starter, a quiet invitation for everyone to feel the warmth of its story. It taught people that even though the boy never lived a real life, the love and dreams woven into his portrait were as real as could be. For Sarah, seeing the painting displayed so proudly felt like a victory, a way to honor Eleanor and her beloved Thomas. It was a beautiful new chapter for an old, mysterious painting. As the portrait found its honored place above the fireplace, glowing softly in the living room, Sarah often sat and gazed at it. She would think about all she had learned, about Eleanor Vance, her diary, and the imagined life of Thomas. A powerful understanding settled in her heart. Even though the boy in the painting never lived a real life, his story and the deep love behind it were absolutely real. She realized that reality wasn't just about what you could touch or see with your eyes. It was also about feelings, memories, and the power of imagination. Eleanor Vance's love for her lost son was so strong that it created a whole world for him in her mind, and then on canvas. That love was as true and real as any love between a mother and her living child. Thomas, the boy in the portrait, might have been a dream, but his kindness, his adventures, and his gentle spirit, as described in the diary, felt incredibly real to Sarah. She knew his favorite tree, his love for small birds, and his thoughtful way of looking at the world. These details, born from a mother's heart, made him a real person in her mind, a friend who taught her about enduring love and hope. Sarah understood that the painting wasn't just a picture of a boy. It was a story of a dream that never faded, a hope that lived on, and a love that found a way to be seen. It taught her that sometimes the things that are imagined or deeply felt can be just as important and real as the things we experience every day. Whenever someone admired the painting and asked about it, Sarah would tell Thomas's story with a full heart. She would explain that he was born from a mother's deepest love and longing, and that made him special. The quiet sighs and thoughtful nods from the listeners showed Sarah that they understood too. The boy, who never lived, was living on through their shared understanding and appreciation. This realization filled Sarah with a quiet joy. She had not only discovered an old family secret, but had also learned a profound truth about love, loss, and the magic of art. The painting was a beacon, reminding her that what truly matters often comes from the heart, even if it begins as a dream. As Sarah looked at the portrait, now shining brightly in the living room, she understood something very important about art. She realized that art was not just about making pretty pictures. It was also a powerful way for people to heal their hearts and to remember things, even things that never truly happened in the real world. Eleanor Vance had used her paints and brushes to mend her broken heart. When she lost her baby, she didn't just feel sad. She channeled all that love and sorrow into creating Thomas. The act of painting him, of imagining his life in her diary, was a way for her to cope with her grief. It gave her a way to express a love that had nowhere else to go. Sarah saw how art became Eleanor's comfort, her way of keeping a dream alive and finding peace. This made Sarah think about how special art really is. It can hold feelings like a treasure chest. It can tell stories without needing words. It can help people remember loved ones, even if those loved ones were only in their minds. The boy in the painting was a perfect example. He never took a breath, never played in a real garden, but through Eleanor's art, he lived on. His story was shared, and his mother's love was felt, all because of a painting. Sarah felt a deep respect for Eleanor Vance. She was not just an artist, she was a healer, using her talent to turn sadness into something beautiful and lasting. Sarah realized that her own drawings of Thomas were also a way of remembering, of keeping his imagined life vibrant. She was following in Eleanor's footsteps, using her own art to connect with a story and to understand deep feelings. This lesson stayed with Sarah. She began to see art everywhere with new eyes, in a colorful drawing from a friend, in a song that made her feel happy, or even in a carefully built sandcastle on the beach. She understood that every piece of art, big or small, held a piece of someone's heart, a memory or a dream, and that made every piece of art truly magical. The portrait of Thomas was not just a painting. It was a teacher, showing Sarah the incredible power of creativity to bring comfort and keep memories bright, even for the most tender of unspoken dreams. The lessons Sarah learned from Eleanor Vance and The Portrait of a Boy Who Never Lived changed her in a special way. She realized that art wasn't just a hobby, it was a powerful language, a way to share feelings and keep stories alive. Inspired by Eleanor's talent and the beautiful imagined life of Thomas, Sarah continued to draw and imagine with even more passion. Her sketchpad became her constant companion. She would sit in front of the portrait, looking at Thomas's thoughtful eyes, and then let her own imagination soar. She didn't just copy Eleanor's ideas, she added her own. What would Thomas do if he visited her world? What games would he play with her? She drew pictures of Thomas in modern clothes, riding a bicycle, or helping her build a magnificent blanket fort. Sarah started to write her own little stories in a small notebook, just like Eleanor had in her diary. She imagined new adventures for Thomas, giving him friends and new places to explore. Sometimes she would even imagine conversations between Thomas and Eleanor, picturing the artist gently smiling as her son told her about his day. Her room became a little art studio. Drawings of Thomas filled her walls, showing him laughing, running, and discovering new wonders. Nana Rose loved seeing Sarah's creativity bloom. She would often peek into Sarah's room, a warm smile on her face, and praise Sarah's latest drawing. "You have Eleanor's spirit, my dear," Nana Rose would say, "that wonderful way of seeing and creating." Sarah also started to notice the stories hidden in other things around her. An old quilt on Nana Rose's bed made her imagine the hands that sewed it, and the happy times it had seen. A smooth, colorful stone she found in the garden made her think of Thomas's collection. The world around her seemed richer, full of unseen stories and quiet connections. Through Eleanor's story, Sarah understood that creativity was a gift, a way to keep love alive and to make the impossible feel real. She knew that as long as she kept drawing and imagining, Thomas would always be alive in her heart, and Eleanor's beautiful act of love would continue to inspire. It was a wonderful feeling, knowing she was part of something so timeless and full of heart. With the portrait of a boy who never lived hanging proudly in the living room, it became much more than just an old painting. For Sarah and her entire family, it transformed into a shining symbol of hope and the wonderful power of imagination. No longer a hidden secret, the portrait now sparked conversations. When visitors asked about the kind-eyed boy, Sarah and Nana Rose would share Eleanor's story, explaining how a mother's love and dreams could create such a vivid, lasting image. They would speak of Eleanor's heartbreak, but also of her strength and her artistic spirit. The painting reminded everyone that even when life brings sadness, there is always room for hope and beauty. It showed them that dreams, even those that couldn't come true in the real world, could still live on and touch people's hearts. The boy, Thomas, became a gentle reminder that love is powerful enough to create and sustain. For Sarah, the painting was a constant source of inspiration. Whenever she felt a little down or her ideas for drawing felt stuck, she would look at Thomas's face. His quiet strength and the story behind him always reminded her to keep imagining, to keep creating, and to never give up on her own dreams. The portrait taught her that sometimes the most magical things come from deep inside our hearts and minds. Nana Rose often smiled when she saw Sarah looking at the painting. She knew that her granddaughter had not only found a family heirloom, but had also discovered a profound truth about life and art. The painting, once a private sorrow, now brought a quiet joy and a sense of wonder to their home. It showed them that imagination was a bridge, connecting the past to the present and sorrow to hope. The family started a new tradition. Every time they looked at the portrait, they would silently remember Eleanor Vance and her loving heart. They understood that the boy who never lived was, in fact, living a very important life. A life in their imaginations, in their conversations, and in the enduring warmth of their home. The painting, with its mysterious history, had finally found its true purpose: to inspire hope, celebrate imagination, and remind everyone of the endless power of love. Sitting in the cozy living room, bathed in the soft glow of the lamp, Sarah looked at the portrait of a boy who never lived. She thought about the dusty attic where she first found it, the curious questions she had, and the amazing journey of discovery she had taken. Now, the painting held a clear and beautiful meaning for her. Sarah understood that the portrait was more than just a picture of a boy. It was a powerful story of love that traveled through time. It showed how Eleanor Vance, a woman from long ago, poured her deepest feelings into her art, creating a son she could never hold. This act of love, born from sadness, had lived on for over 100 years, touching hearts in every generation of their family. The painting was a bridge. It connected Eleanor, the artist, to Thomas, her imagined son. It connected Thomas to Sarah, the curious girl who brought his story to light. And it connected Sarah to Nana Rose, sharing a special secret that was now a cherished family tale. It taught Sarah that love never truly dies. It just finds new ways to express itself, sometimes through paint, sometimes through words, and sometimes through the simple act of remembering. Sarah realized that art had a magical power to bring people together, even across many years. It allowed her to feel close to Eleanor, understanding her heart and her dreams. It allowed her to know Thomas, the kind-hearted boy who loved bumblebees and apple trees. This connection, woven through art and a shared story, made her family's history feel richer and more alive. The portrait was a reminder that imagination is a wonderful gift. It can create worlds, bring dreams to life, and offer comfort. And love, true love, is the strongest magic of all, capable of making even things that never truly lived feel incredibly real and important. As Sarah grew older, she would always look at the portrait and remember the boy who never lived, but whose story lived on in her heart. She understood that she was a part of his story now, helping to keep Eleanor's love and imagination shining bright for generations to come. The painting was a beautiful, timeless treasure, a testament to the enduring power of art and the unbreakable bond of love that connects us all.